Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.
And welcome everybody to the Bison Media Zone. We do it each and every Wednesday at 10:35 with the Forum's Jeff Kolpak. I'm Dom Izzo. North Dakota State football back on the road this week for a trip to East Tennessee State, Johnson City, Tennessee. First time the Bison have ever played a football game in the state of Tennessee, as they'll take on the Buccaneers out of the SoCon, which we'll get to them in just a moment. Bison are 1-1 after a big win over Tennessee State. We mentioned this on Monday on the Bison video blog about the youth movement we saw in the second half of the game. Non-conference is an opportunity to see, I think, that. Depending on how the games play out, we'll see how this Saturday goes and next week with Towson. But there are players here, Jeff, that I think are knocking on the door to get a chance to play some more reps.
I've seen it for a long time when they bring in the substitutes in the second half, and when you're looking at a blowout victory in the making here, you're wondering how these guys are going to perform. And what I've seen, what I saw last Saturday was, I think some guys who certainly played better in mop-up duty than I've seen before.
Yep.
I mean, I think Tennessee State, even they held their starters in, they held their starting quarterback in, and they still didn't really move the ball against that defense. I saw linebackers making plays like starters.
Yeah.
I saw defensive linemen making plays like starters. Toby Anene comes to mind. And so when you look at that and you think, I just felt they played different than I've seen other mop-up games, if that makes sense.
No doubt. I want to start on quarterback. We always talk about that. Cam Miller is playing at a Walter Payton level.
80%.
I think we're if that somehow stays around there, he is in the conversation to win that award. We saw Cole Payton catch a pass last week. He was lined up at running back. He was lined up at tight end, and I think we're going to see that again because of the emergence of the third-string quarterback in Nathan Hayes. And here's a guy we have not talked a whole lot about, Jeff, through his first couple of years here, but he flashed during spring ball. He had a really good fall camp. Then he goes and does this and scores his first career touchdown
and
on
here
Saturday.
we hear he's one of the fastest guys on the team. Is that right?
Well, the challenge is out there.
The Cole Payton challenge.
Payton wants a race, but what do we make of number 12's emergence here?
Well, I don't know if I wouldn't get too giddy over this just because it's a run in the second half against a team that was probably gassed, but I think he's shown over the course of fall camp. I think the coaches have told us that they have a lot more confidence in him. And yes, because of that, I think you do put Cole Payton in other areas. And why not? No. I mean, I still think he needs to get off the schneid a little bit. I mean, the first carry went for a minus. They sniffed that out.
Yes,
first play.
The first play of the game they saw coming.
Yep. Running back. But I think the more you put him at different spots, the more it frees him up because it's not so isolated. Like, okay, they're bringing in Cole Payton and he's there.
Yep.
Where do you think they're going to go with the ball? And they bring in Cole Payton and they put him as quarterback. What do you think he's going to do? Because that's all you've seen on film. The more times you can get him in the game and the more spots you can put at him, it's not like you're depending on the element of surprise here. Because now I think the more he's in there, the more they have to pay attention to other players too.
And I look at it where Payton threw a touchdown pass. He also threw a pick, caught a pass. I mean, if he's as talented an athlete as he is, and we've been told he's the best athlete on the team, and if you think you're worried about Cam Miller getting hurt, you've got this guy that they think that, and Hayes has progressed enough. He's got a dynamite arm. He might have the best arm on the team. I've been told that as well. And Hayes.
Well, maybe. I guess I haven't seen that in a game. But, when you talk about Cole Payton, I think with the injury to Rajah Nelson, that may give him more opportunities to be maybe that slot guy or that receiver, maybe not split out wide, but where Rajah is. Yeah. And so maybe there's some opportunities there. But, again, I go back to if you're going to use them, use them.
And I think they're going to do that again. We're going to see it again this coming week with East Tennessee State. You mentioned Toby Anene. That's another one of the young defensive guys, whether it be Donovan Woolen we talked about on last week's show, Nathaniel Staling, Austin Altapeter. Toby Anene walked into the press conference, and I've interviewed him a couple times prior to this. He looks the part, Jeffrey. And Tim Polisic told me right now he's our number 3 defensive end. Behind Rokes and Hendricks, it's this guy up there.
He looked all of 6'4", 252 pounds when he walked in. When we see these guys in practice, they're in pads. And so it's hard to get a gauge of really how big they are because everybody's kind of big out there. But when he walks in among us mere people, and you look at it, you go, oh, wow, okay. Now and he's just what, a redshirt for a
sophomore now.
He's a sophomore,
yep. Third-year sophomore.
So obviously grown into and becoming just the way he looks. It kind of reminds me, not in a way of, remember when James Ruffin was it Northern Iowa, and he walked into the post-game press conference like 2008 or something.
Yep.
You look at it and go, oh, okay, that's what Craig Bull is talking about. That's how they look like, and I had a similar feeling. I'm not saying Tommy Anenda is going to be James Ruffin, but he kind of looked like it.
I would say we've been looking for the guy off the edge. Who's going to be the guy off the edge? Since basically Derek Tuska moved on, and Braden Thomas filled that role in 2021. This guy could potentially do that. To get him out there and just let him go, he's got the raw power. He's certainly seen the athleticism. He could be a devastator on the end.
Do you get the feeling that now with a new head coach and Tim Polasek that he's maybe not afraid to pull the reins off of maybe some younger guys earlier because he kind of sees what he has in that?
Well, we saw that with Jackson Williams was returning kicks. I think the reins are off on him. I think Jackson Williams is going to play the whole year. I believe that, the true freshman there. We'll see about the other ones. If Donovan Woolen plays the way he flashed on Saturday makes me believe that he could be a guy who plays. And that is something you've talked to me about over the last 2 years. In the era we live in now in the portal, there's no guarantee you're going to have a guy for 4 years. Why not let him play? If he's one of your best guys, get him out there and play him.
Well, I think we've seen that in college basketball over the last 2-3 years. If you talk to Dave Richmond, I don't think he really cares about redshirting players anymore for physical development just because of that.
Right.
If you have a really good athlete player,
play him.
Yeah, you better play him now and use him because maybe in 3 years they may not be here anymore. So I would play Donovan Woolen. I would play Jackson Williams. I thought he looked dynamite on that kickoff return. That kickoff return is something they just haven't been real explosive at.
Not since Christian Watson.
Since Christian Watson went to Green Bay. Last year I thought it was average at best. I think you're looking for some guy that can just give that little juice and maybe once a game get you to the 40-yard line.
He did that and beyond in the game on Saturday, Williams, against Tennessee State. Wide receiver is a spot that we've been clamoring to see some of the younger players step up. Bryce Lance did that in spades. You mentioned the injury to Raja Nelson. That leads to me, I know Big E had a story this morning on Chris Harris, another guy who's been around. He's a junior. Lance is there. There's some guys. Mekhi Collins got his first touchdown. I am really interested, Jeff, as we get closer to Valley play, how that position continues to develop, especially if Nelson is out long term.
I believe the emergence, Dom, of Bryce Lance, and it's not a surprise because I think we saw it all fall, but I think it helps soften the blow of Eli Green going to Iowa State. Eli Green's had 4 catches in 2 games, and you know, maybe he'll get more as season goes on. He's behind a couple pretty good players.
Studs at Iowa State.
But that left the door open, and Bryce Lance has certainly opened it after 2 games.
I had this asked of me, and I'll throw this at you for what, and I could throw shots at the previous staff, but both Cam Miller said it and Tim Polasek said it. They couldn't believe that Bryce only had 1 career catch heading into this season, and you weren't going to take Zach Mathis and Eli Green off the field last year. But a guy like Jake Lippy was playing in front of him, or a couple other guys, and Raja obviously was out there as well. That's a question. I think it's a fair question, especially if the quarterback and the new coach are bringing it up.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. I wasn't in practice all during the regular season last year. We see it in fall, but once the season starts, you don't see him. Maybe he's just improved that much.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, you know, if you look back at, I don't watch film in practice. So maybe he just wasn't catching the ball or doing some things. I'm not going to throw last year's coaches under the bus just because they were pretty productive. I mean, Cam Miller completed 72% of his passes, Don. Not like he was 50%.
No.
So these guys were obviously, I think, doing the job.
Just wonder on that. And sometimes development happens at a different time for everybody. East Tennessee State is the opponent out of the SoCon. We saw the Buccaneers up here in 2021 in the quarterfinals. After that, they won a combined 6 games, fired their coach. They brought in Trey Lamb. This is the site of where we're going to be on Saturday. They're 1-1 on the season. They've yet to play an FCS team, Jeff, as you wrote. They lost to App State, then beat Division II Virginia Wise last week. He brought in 27 transfers from Gardner-Webb, the school he was at. I don't know what we're going to get out of the Buccaneers on Saturday.
Well, I'm hoping to get a full stadium. As you can see, there's some sitting room on a bank.
Yeah, a little grassy knoll there.
And head coach Trey Lamb said he's hoping for 15,000. The stadium holds about 7,600 fans, so he wants to double the standing room or double the capacity of the standing room. This is Gardner-Webb North. It really is. I mean, this guy, and why not? I
Yeah,
mean, Trey
they
Lamb,
were good. They won the league there.
when he took over, it was consecutive 3-8 seasons for East Tennessee State. He led Gardner Webb, Trey Lamb, to the FCS playoffs, lost to Mercer, 17-3 in the first round, which was kind of not a good one. But he brought his quarterback. He's brought his top 2 quarterbacks.
Yep.
He brought 5 of his top 6 receivers over, brought his couple, the top linebackers, the top 2 tacklers.
Yep.
And you know what? This is the transfer portal.
Right.
You're eligible right away.
If they're good, why not have them come with you? Gardner Webb beat Eastern Kentucky. I remember we talked about that in the playoffs 2 years ago. You've been to that campus or where it's located. If you can win there, you can win in Johnson City.
It's a little off the beaten path, Boiling Spring, North Carolina. But I wonder if Trey Lamb, when he got the job, said, I'm bringing my luggage.
Yeah.
I'm bringing my
if
luggage.
Dion can do it, but my point being, though, he wanted a spot there. There's more resources. It's a better league. The SoCon is in the Big South that conducive that I think that we've already seen a team win there at East Tennessee a couple years ago. And the way the SoCon has changed now where it's not Georgia Southern and App State anymore. Now you have Furman, Samford,
And they're
Chattanooga.
inconsistent.
Right.
Yeah.
It's rotating there that this team can get back to the top of the league in my mind.
And I think they have a president and athletic director that are all on board in football.
Yep.
And that is the biggest thing ever, too. I think it's Johnson City seems like a pretty cool community. I'm excited to go see it.
Yep.
And what a good thing for them to bring in
Absolutely.
one of the top programs in the FCS. What a good get for them. They know it. I mean, they're comparing this to Georgia Southern and Marshall teams from the 90s when East Tennessee State had football. Then they dropped it.
dropped football for 20 years. They were without a football
brought
team.
it back. And I'm just hoping for good weather because it'd be great for the town and that community to really just sell that out and have fans hanging from the rafters, so to speak.
This is the first of a home-and-home. ETSU will come to Fargo in September of 2026. We come back on the BMZ, a look at the spotlight games as we're into week 3 of this FCS season. Some dynamite matchups between the Big Sky and the Valley to keep your eyes peeled on as we'll do that back on the Bison Media Zone right after this. Wrapping things up here on the Bison Media Zone for this Wednesday, a look at some of the spotlight games across the FCS. Jeffrey, this weekend, Albany, Idaho's a rematch of the quarterfinal game last year in Moscow. The Vandals have yet to play an FCS team. They split against 2 FBS teams. That game in Grand Forks may be interesting. Northern Iowa steps up in class after they played Valpo and St. Thomas. They have Nebraska. That bottom right one is the one I think I'll circle. Incarnate Word and SIU, there might be some points scored in that one.
Well, I think for Incarnate Word, that's a must-win if it wants to be considered into the conversation for playoffs down the line, unless they really run well, I guess you could run the table in the South.
But the Southland's still tough.
But the loss at South Dakota State didn't help them, and Southern Illinois is tough at home, and so we'll see. I look at Albany and Idaho. Tim Polsek said at his press conference this week that going one time zone over to the East time zone is not a big deal, but when you have to go cross country, or in this case when Wyoming had to go to Hawaii or in Wyoming had to go to Connecticut, he goes, that's a challenge. And so I think it's going to be a pretty big challenge for Albany to go all the way across the country and play in the West time zone.
Yeah, they're not as good either as they were last year.
No.
I think, Reese Poffenbarger's gone now. He's at the U. Idaho might be on its third-string quarterback, though, in this game. They've lost each of their starters and their backup over the last 2 weeks. UND's in that interesting spot. Big win. Now, the last couple of years, they've had the big win and then the letdown. They have an opponent in Idaho State who they should beat on Saturday. That's one I'm going to keep my eye on Saturday afternoon.
Right after the big win against NDSU last year, UND went down to Northern Iowa. I think got shut out, right, and totally laid an egg. And obviously that's been an emphasis of Bubba Schweigert this week. I think he mentioned it at his Monday press conference, and I would expect them, to maybe Idaho State's good. They're better than what you think they are.
Yes, they are better.
I mean, they're getting better. You think of Idaho State, you think, 2-10, here we go. But I think maybe they're improving some. But it's a winnable game. Should win for UND. Now, can you handle success?
Correct. There's one game that's not on there. I'm interested in your thoughts. Augustana's playing South Dakota State this week.
I'm just glad the Bison aren't playing a Division II team. I'm glad I don't have to cover something like that.
I'm with you.
Division II games.
I would take what we're covering this week as opposed to, or even like last week with Tennessee State coming in, than seeing Northern and Augie. That's each of the South Dakota teams played a Division II.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I just don't. And
I get why they're doing it. It doesn't.
why
do
are they
anything for
doing
them.
it?
They think they can get some more butts in the seats. I understand why South Dakota did it. I don't know why South Dakota State's doing it. They're getting people
They sold
to
out
go.
last week.
They're getting people to go. I don't understand on that. Unless there was a team that dropped off their schedule that I'm not aware of, that one is a head scratcher to me on why they went and did this on that. So
I don't.
it's a head scratcher on that.
Well,
one.
when the Bison, who did they play?
It was Ferris State.
Ferris State, but that's because Montana
State dropped
them off. And and that was kind of a blasé game.
Oh, Gene Taylor was not thrilled
No.
about that. Don't forget, we'll be with you on Saturday for Bison Game Day live in Johnson City. Our coverage begins at 10 a.m. on WDAY with Jeff, myself, Kyle, and Sam. And then we'll be with you. Note the start time. Kickoff show at 4:20 for the game at 4:30 between the Bison and the Buccaneers. As NDSU tries to go to 2-1 on the season, East Tennessee State looking for its biggest win as an FCS
Bringing
team.
the whole shebang out to Johnson
We got
City.
everybody going. It's going to be a big crew. For Jeff Kolpak, I'm Dom Izzo. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, on the Bison Media Zone. We'll see you back here next Wednesday and see you on Saturday.